At first glance, this looks like a peaceful harvest scene. Golden wheat fields stretching toward the horizon. Peasants resting under a pear tree, sharing bread and cheese. The drowsy heat of late summer in 1565. Except nothing in this painting is what it seems. For one, the geography is impossible. You're looking at a view that could never exist in real life. And the workers are wearing bizarre pouches on their groins designed to advertise their masculine prowess. In the distance, people are swimming completely naked. And in the center background, a group of villagers is gathered around something brutal. A blood sport so violent that when I tell you what they're doing later in this video, you'll understand why Pieter Bruegel the Elder was unlike any artist before him. This painting is called The Harvesters, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City calls it the first modern landscape and a watershed in the history of Western art. But it's not famous just for being beautiful. It's famous for being brutally, unflinchingly honest about what human life actually looked like in the 16th century. And the more you look, the more secrets you'll find. Let's start with something unusual. This painting shows a sweeping panorama from the wheat fields in the foreground all the way to the ships on the horizon and distant blue mountains. It's the kind of view you'd get from standing on top of a mountain or a high cliff, looking down at the world spread out below you. But here's the problem. This is supposed to be Flanders, in modern-day Belgium, one of the flattest places in all of Europe. There's no mountain, there's no cliff. Although some parts of Flanders can be hilly and rolly, the vantage point Bruegel is showing here simply does not exist. The Metropolitan Museum itself acknowledges this, stating that Bruegel maps realistic detail onto an impossible landscape. So why did Bruegel create this impossible view? Because he wanted to show us everything all at once, the complete economic system of 16th century agricultural life. From the workers swinging scythes in the foreground, to the women carrying grain bundles, to the carts on the road, to the ships that will carry the harvest to distant markets. This isn't just a painting of a harvest. It's a painting of how an entire society functions, seen from a God's eye perspective that allows us to understand the whole system at a glance. Pieter Bruegel the Elder was born around 1525 in or near Breda, in the Duchy of Brabant, then part of the Habsburg Netherlands, now a part of Belgium. Not coincidentally, centuries later, another great painter, Vincent van Gogh, would also come from the same region and be inspired by the same land and also by laborers. Almost nothing is known about Bruegel's early life, possibly because he came from humble origins, and records of peasant children simply weren't kept. But most scholars argue that his family must have had some means, because what we do know is that he traveled to Italy like most ambitious northern artists. Unlike them, however, he came back uninterested in painting Michelangelo or Raphael. Instead, Bruegel became obsessed with documenting real life. There are accounts that he would dress in peasant clothing and attend village weddings and festivals, sketching what he saw while blending in with the crowd. He wanted to capture how people actually lived, not how nobles and clergy wanted them to be portrayed. This commitment to honesty made him revolutionary. In 1565, when religious art was becoming dangerous, Catholics and Protestants were literally killing each other over images, Bruegel turned to secular subjects. His patron, Nicholas Jongelink, commissioned a series of paintings depicting the seasons. The Harvesters here represents late summer, and it's one of 5 that survive today. Some of the others can be seen today alongside the greatest Bruegel collection in the world at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. Now let's look at what Bruegel actually painted here, because this canvas is packed with details that most people walk right past. Under the massive pear tree in the foreground, peasants are taking their midday meal. You can see bread being sliced, beer being poured right down the hatch from a terracotta jug, and faces that genuinely look content and relaxed. But look at the man on the left side of the group. He's fallen completely asleep, mouth hanging open, black hat slipping off, one arm bent behind his head as a makeshift pillow. This is what exhaustion looks like after hours of swinging a scythe in the August heat. Bruegel didn't idealize his people. He painted them as they were. And then there are those strange pouches the men have at the front of their pants. These are codpieces. They're padded, often ornamental garments designed to cover and emphasize the male genitals. They were at the height of fashion in the 1560s, and they ranged from practical to absolutely ridiculous. They were essentially masculine advertisement, a way of broadcasting virility and sexual prowess, though one cultural anthropologist has argued that some codpieces may have been used to hold bandages for syphilis treatment, which, if true, makes the masculine display angle a little bit darkly ironic. To us, they look a bit comical. To Bruegel's contemporaries, they were just part of how young men dressed, regardless of class. Now let your eye travel to that pond in the distance. You see those small figures? Some of them are swimming, and they're doing it completely nude. Public nudity for bathing wasn't scandalous in rural 16th century life. It was normal. Bodies weren't treated with the shame that Victorian morality would later impose. People worked all day in the heat. They stripped down to swim, and they thought nothing of it. On the far right in the foreground, someone's shaking apples from a tree. But wait, this is supposed to be late summer, the wheat harvest. Most apples come in autumn. Are these the early apples that drop in August, or is Bruegel showing us multiple seasons, multiple moments, all encompassed into a single, impossible view? Time and space itself are possibly compressed in this painting in a brilliant way. Now we come to that detail that I mentioned in the beginning, that circle of villagers in the middle ground of the painting. What are they doing? Well, they're participating in what's called cock throwing, a blood sport that was wildly popular in medieval and Renaissance Europe. Here's how cock throwing worked. A live rooster would be tied by one leg to a stake, driven into the ground. Sometimes it would be balanced on a sort of a wooden lever. Villagers, often young men and boys, would pay a small fee for the chance to throw sticks, stones, and other objects at the bird from a distance. You can actually see what looks like a piece of wood being hurled at this rooster if you look closely at this painting. The goal was to kill it. The rooster would be hit repeatedly, injured, suffering, bleeding, until finally someone landed that fatal blow. It was torturous for the bird, but the person that won would get the dead bird as a prize. They would be able to serve it for dinner. This was entertainment. This was how people celebrated festivals and holidays. Children watched, adults cheered, and Bruegel painted it happening right here in the middle of a harvest celebration. Not the focus of this scene, but also not left out. Just a few hundred feet away from people eating lunch and sleeping under trees. This is what makes Bruegel extraordinary, and you can see this extraordinary brilliance in so many of his other paintings. Now that you've watched this video, you'll have a new appreciation every time you see a Bruegel in a great museum. He didn't sanitize the past. He didn't paint an idealized version of peasant life everywhere where everything's golden wheat and happy faces, la-di-da. He painted the truth. Beauty and violence coexist. Rest and brutality happen simultaneously. Human life contains multitudes, and Bruegel was brave enough and genius enough to show all of it. Before the harvesters, landscape painting was just background. It was decoration for religious scenes or noble portraits. The natural world was never considered worthy of serious artistic attention on its own. But Bruegel made ordinary people in an ordinary landscape with all their contradictions, their violence, their sexuality, their exhaustion, their emotion, the entire subject. No mythological drama, no nobles, just humans being human. And that single choice changed the course of Western art. The Dutch Golden Age painters who came after, artists like Ruysdael and Van Goyen, they learned from Bruegel that landscape itself could be worthy of attention. The 19th century realists like Courbet, one of my personal favorites, and Millet, you can see in the Musée d'Orsay, they followed his example of treating working people with dignity and honesty. Even Van Gogh started like that, with his paintings like The Potato Eaters. Bruegel showed that great art didn't require gods or heroes. It just required honest observation and the courage to paint what you actually saw, even when what you saw was uncomfortable, even when it revealed things about humanity that we'd rather not acknowledge. The Harvesters hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where it's been since 1919. It's part of that cycle of 5 surviving seasonal paintings. The others show winter, spring, autumn. Together, they form one of the most important series in Western art. But even on its own here at the Met, The Harvesters is extraordinary and an extraordinary experience. Nearly 460 years after Bruegel painted it, this impossible view of peasants working, resting, swimming naked, and participating in questionable sports still feels urgently relevant because we're still grappling with the same questions. How do we reconcile beauty and violence, labor and rest, the casual cruelty of entertainment with the exhaustion of survival? Bruegel didn't offer answers. He just painted what he saw, completely and honestly. And that honesty is what made The Harvesters timeless. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What details did you notice that I didn't mention? If you'd love to have The Harvesters in your home or even on your iPhone or Android case, check the description below for links to purchase prints and products featuring this masterpiece. Anything that you buy goes to support this channel and helps me make more great videos for you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Bruegel's world, make sure to check out my other videos where we explore more incredible works of art and art history. Thank you all for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.